All right, it's time for a brand new Bid Nerds. My partner, Michael Deeb, is in a freezy internet zone, so he is robot. He is an AI robot. We got rid of Michael Deeb. Now we have ChatGPT Deeb. This is not a real person. It's a digital analog.
Never was.
Of Michael
Never
Deeb.
was.
That's right. No one actually wanted to be my partner on the show, so I had to create one. Kind of like Weird Science, only I chose an unattractive middle-aged guy instead of a hot chick. What the heck is wrong? What am I, an idiot?
Yeah.
I'm doing it wrong.
It's Bid Nerds at Bernie's.
Right. All right, guys. Thanks for joining us on this episode. If you're new to the channel and you're wondering, okay, I've heard about the Bid Nerds. What exactly is this? What we do is we scour all the automotive enthusiast auction sites like Bring a Trailer, Cars and Bids, P-Car Market, and more. We scour them all to find you that one most interesting car of the day. And we have a conversation about that car. We tell you about that car's listing. And then the fun part is we make a prediction as what's going to happen with that car's auction. So you can play along too. You can go in the comments. We will make our bids right here on the episode. We will tell you what we think is going to happen with that car's auction. You can play along. And at the end of the episode, we will go in the future and we will reconcile our incorrect bids with what actually happened. So if you're one of the one or two people out there who actually watch the show, play along. It's a lot of fun. We appreciate your being here. Hit the subscribe, like, and notification button if you haven't done so already. We love it when you do. We love to see the comments below. And boy, I don't know about you, Michael D, but I'm learning a lot reading the comments. It seems like our fans, our Nerd Herd Nation, knows a lot more about the cars that we tend to choose than we do, because I've been getting learned on that sucker, man.
We get called out every day, and that's great. It just means that people are paying attention, and I love to see it. We got our ass busted on the we made a comment on the Volkswagen the GTI, the 16 valve 2-liter. And one of the two of us said something about, that engine was available in the Corrado. And they're like, that engine was not available in the Corrado. I was like, oh yeah, you're right. Thanks for catching that.
That engine was definitely not. Well, you know what? That is not true.
I'm going
to go ahead and say in America. Yeah. So the commenter was not correct. That engine was available in the Japanese version. And we covered one of those cars years ago.
We did.
Of all the cars we've covered that we've talked about, man, that was a car that I wish I would have gotten, because it went for like $16,000 with 30,000 miles on it. Like a purple Corrado VR6.
It was VR6, black, and it had,
valve, yeah.
It was black, but it had like that. Remember BMW did an M3 lightweight? It had like the Hurricane interior. It was a cloth interior with like a rainbow confetti, and it was a Japanese market car, but it was left-hand drive. It was a Corrado with a 16 valve 2-liter, but it was black and it had like low mileage. And man, yeah, JP, you and I thought that car was going to go 25-30 grand, and it didn't even bring 20 and sold. Oh, what a deal that would have been.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's not the most interesting car of the day. The most interesting car of the day is the one that we're just about to talk about. But before we do our shout out, I want to give a shout out to our good friends at Godden Porsche of Las Vegas. If you're looking for an enthusiast car, a classic Porsche, or a brand new Porsche, give them a shout out over there. They are actual experts unlike us, and they will help you find the enthusiast car that suits you perfectly and at the price that you actually want. And look, you don't have to deal with all the stupid auction stuff, because sometimes buying a car from these auctions is kind of a pain in the butt. It's fun to watch these auctions. It's fun to maybe try to sell a car on these auctions, but a lot of times there's some hassles that kind of come along with it. And we talk about that sometimes on this show too. But let's get to the most interesting car of the day. Michael Deeb, this one is a very interesting car with some interesting
really interesting. Yeah, so Doug DeMuro's Cars and Bids auction platform is offered for your enjoyment. This 2005 Ferrari F430 Berlinetta. What transmission does it have, do you ask? Well, a gated 6-speed manual conversion. In other words, this car was born with an F1 gearbox, and then somebody spent the $30,000 to put a gated 6-speed manual using original Ferrari parts inside this car and make it that much more fun and that much more valuable. We all know that basically the take rate on manuals when F430s were being produced was about 15%. That is a crude generalization. It's not an accurate number, but it's pretty close. So the manual cars now, Berlinettas and Spiders with low miles bring upwards of $250,000. They are $250,000 cars, where F1 cars are still in that $130,000 to $160,000 range, depending on how low miles and how nice the car is. This car has 27,000 miles on it. It's offered out of Moore Park, California. And with the gated manual, it's going to bring more than an F1 gearbox would. It's simple math. Spend 30 grand, get 50 more for your car. Plus, you'll enjoy driving this car way more because the F1 gearbox was a single plate autumn manual car, and those single plate cars, when they shift gears, they have a big interruption in power, and the cars are actually very herky jerky, whereas the manual are just a blast to drive. This car's got a few little upgrades, JP. They flash the ECU, they put fab speed headers on it. By all accounts, this car is going to rip. 430s don't have a timing belt, a timing chain, so the maintenance costs on a car like this will be way easier to deal with. Ferraris from this era, these F430s were judged on their a couple of different rare options. Did the car have ceramic brakes? This one does not. Did the car have carbon fiber bucket seats? This car does not. And does the car have the challenge wheels, the forged wheels? This car does not. So this is a car in Grigio titanium with a black interior and a gated manual. I'm going to tell you right now, John, this is probably going to trip for one of the least expensive manual F430s that money can buy. If you wanted an F430 with a manual and you missed the boat because they became too expensive, this, my friends, is your car. So, JP, I will send it back to you. This is going to be a fantastic deal to get 500 horsepower and 340 pound-foot of torque with a 6-speed manual transmission in a car that is basically just as fast as the 997.2 GT3 4-liter. It's basically the same specification with a 6-speed manual, but out of Maranello. This is a really great car. I'm kind of smitten, John. I send it back to you. Would you plump the money that it would take to get one of these?
Well, I mean, it's certainly a car I'd love to own for sure. I mean, of course. Yeah. But that said, I don't know. I mean, look, it's definitely going to be out of my price range, even if it does represent a discount versus a factory manual car, which it will. Yeah. We had a conversation very recently about a Toyota Supra that was similar to this car in the sense that it had its automatic transmission removed and swapped out with a manual. And you and I talked at length about, and honestly, if I recall, you thought it would bring pretty close to the same money as a real one or a factory one. Yeah. And I was way more bearish. And it turns out I was right on that one because that car did not get anywhere close to, I think, what a factory one would have brought.
I thought the manual swap on the Supra was going to represent a 10 to 15% concession over a retail number. Your price was in that 20 to 22% range, and the car tripped for like a 35% concession over what retail should have been. And so I'm wondering if that's going to be the same case here. You know, this car with about, less than 30,000 miles in good condition, but, it's not a great build as far as it doesn't have one of the unicorn options like ceramics or the seats or anything like that. So this is probably like a just over $200,000, like 210, 225, somewhere in that range. The color silver, I don't think it really enhances the value either. It's not a popular Ferrari color. I should say it is a popular Ferrari color, but not a color that I think anybody's going to pay a premium for in the secondary market. So it'll be interesting to see where this car comes in. It's again, if it were all from Maranello, this is north of 200,000, but I don't think this car is going to come anywhere near that.
Well, and we're definitely seeing a softening across the board on almost everything. So something like this, if you're saying that if it were a factory one with a manual, it would be somewhere in that 220, maybe
or less,
maybe 3 months ago, but now it's probably going to be just under 200. So what will the discount be for both the softening economy, Michael Deeb's camera disappearing, and the God, Mr. Deeb here. Our AI is not so. It's lacking on the I part of the AI.
It sure is.
For those of you who know what that acronym means, So Yes, I love this car. If this was the kind of price, if you could get a discount down in the $100,000 range, this car I think, yeah, heck yeah, I'm game. Let's get after it. But where do you think this car is going to land, Michael Deeb?
Yeah, I think this car is worth less than 150 grand. Doug DeMuro has surprised us recently by getting some pretty good retail numbers for some like exotic and sports cars, and he's certainly brought a lot of new eyeballs to his platform just in the last week or two. So with that being said, JP, I'm gonna go. Man, I'm probably gonna regret this. I'm gonna say $140,000. But if this car trips or if it stalls out at 125, I won't be surprised. But if it stalls out at 125 and sells for that number, I'm gonna be mad I didn't buy it myself. So I'm gonna say 140 grand, JP, and send it back to you. Again, let's say in this market, this should be a $200,000 car. So what do you think?
Well, I know that a lot more eyeballs are going to Cars and Bids than have ever gone there before. Doug DeMuro was trending for the first time ever in his career last week, even though he has a solid YouTube channel that's been around forever and he regularly gets millions of views on his car reviews. He has never been trending technically, and the $37 million investment that his platform got definitely brought some attention to not just his platform, but I would assume the cars that are being sold on there, because I mean, heck, he went out and bought himself a CGT. What the heck, man? That works. You would out too. Yeah, I totally would. Yeah. Okay, so where you're saying $140, I'm going. Yeah, I think that's about right. I'm going to go under, of course. I'm going to say 130 because I do think things are softening. Normally, I would say it's going to FTS because it's Cars and Bids, but I think Cars and Bids, this is kind of a moment. Even though everything's softening, they got a lot more attention. It's interesting to watch what's going on over at Cars and Bids. We're seeing more interesting cars. This car definitely fits the bill. When we say the most interesting car of the day, we mean it. This one isn't your normal bear, right? I mean, you got to kind of, there's some moving parts, literally and figuratively. So yeah, $130, you're saying $140. Either one of those numbers, I think it really does represent a heck of a value in an amazing driving car.
Yeah, it's there's F430s out there with 60 and 80,000 miles on them, and this isn't one of them. This is a sub 30,000 mile gated manual F430. I mean,
and it's a coupe. I like spiders. I'm not a cabrio phobe like most people, so I would actually be okay with a drop top. But certainly a coupe. God, this is a beautiful car, and this is one of those cars that you can maintain. You can, like you said, you can actually get to the timing chain through the access panel in the interior as opposed to pulling the whole damn engine out. So, all right, what do you guys think out there in the nerd herd? Is this car gonna fail to sell? Is it going to bring all the money because it's a manual and who cares if it came from the factory or not? It's still Ferrari parts, so maybe it will bring that $200,000. Are we way too bearish here? Is this car going to find all that cash? Is Doug DeMuro just going to spread some of that money around? Is he going to pass it out so people can bid big dough? Here's something that we do know that happens, and it's not official and it's very rarely publicized, but sometimes when the bidding gets really close to the reserve but doesn't meet it, the platform has the option to split to actually pay the spread to the seller of the car, and we know that those things happen, and we know frankly that that's happened on Cars and Bids, maybe more than any other platform on average.
Yeah, it looks like in the last year they started making post-hammer deals to trip cars.
Yep.
Remember we covered that 997 GT3, and it turned out like by the next day they said, okay, this car sold after, but then we didn't know what it sold for. Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with this one. Like you said, JP, 140 or 130. Either one would represent a tremendous value for a gated manual Ferrari with like well under 50,000 miles. So let's see what happens. I'm very excited. Hurry up and get to commercial break so we get to this.
All right, guys, put your bid in below in the comments, and we're going to be right back to the future right after this. Hey, guys, I got to tell you about our friends Godden Porsche of Las Vegas and Godden Classic. If you're looking for a new Porsche or a classic, you got to call our friend Steve at Godden, this guy.
1989 linen gray metallic G50 cab.
Is that going to be for sale?
It is going to be for sale. The car only has 65,000 miles on it.
Save yourself the hassle of screwing around with all the auctions like we always talk about, and just talk to Steve. He'll find you the classic Porsche you're looking for. God and Porsche of Las Vegas.
If you love watching car videos on YouTube, you gotta check out my channel, The Raleigh Show. Oh, this car! I am driving a 2020 Lamborghini SVJ. This car, watch this. Oh! 115 mile an hour turn like it's nothing.
Oh my gosh, in the future I have to burp. Sorry, everybody. Right now, I think it's something about the flux capacitors.
It is.
Pressure on your diaphragm, and it makes you want to. Anyways, sorry if you guys caught that. I tried to do it away from the microphone. Welcome to the future of Bid Nerds. We are here with the results of this F430 Berlinetta Ferrari that is a beautiful machine with a 6-speed gated manual transmission that did not come in the car from the factory. It was swapped. Michael Deeb, we are all on the pins and the needles. What happened with the results of this transmission swap Ferrari?
John, I'm actually a little confused by this result. So again, to review, I said $140,000 would bring it home. You took the under at $130,000. Our car, which was a reserve auction, met its reserve and sold for just $122,000 on a whopping, this was the high bid count for the week, 73 bids on Cars and Bids, Doug DeMuro's site. So John, a couple things to just for context, because I want you to understand why this number confuses me so much. If this were a natural 6-speed manual with under 30,000 miles, an F430 Berlinetta with a 6-speed from the factory, this would be an over $200,000 car. Let's call it $222,000. If it were just an F1 gearbox car, a coupe with a Berlinetta hardtop, this would be a $122,000 car. So presumably this guy spent between $30,000 and $40,000 to do the 6-speed swap and didn't receive a return on his investment. If in fact he paid $122,000 for the car, which he probably didn't. He probably picked up this car a few years ago for 80 grand or something, but it just, he might have still cleared his money, so to speak, but it just seems like nobody paid a premium for the fact that the gearbox is in there. And I don't know, that it's kind of a head scratcher result. I really thought this car would bring some kind of premium over an F1, and the number that it brought, $122,000, doesn't seem like it's much of a premium if this car still had the F1 gearbox in it. And I'm not, that doesn't make sense to me. Normally I would, what I feel like we've been seeing is that a lot of these 6-speed conversion cars have brought a premium, just not comparable numbers to the ones that came from the factory. They kind of broached some delta between the F1s and the manuals, and this didn't. This is F1 money, and you get the 6-speed for free. That seems like a whopping, just a mega value to me. And honestly, John, even though I don't pine after a silver Ferrari, I'm really bummed I didn't pay closer attention to this. Not that I have $122,000 to drop on a Ferrari at this moment, but man, I don't know that we'd see another one bring so little money. This seems like an anomaly to me. So I send it back to you, JP. I don't think it had anything to do with the platform. 73 bids. The people were all over this car, but the bidding stopped at 122, and the consignor was already happy with the money he netted at that point. I'm surprised by this result as I send it over to you. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree with you in the respect that, yeah, it's surprising that it didn't bring more than an F1 transmission one, but it sure is nice to know that maybe this is a car that's attainable. I mean, I wonder how many there are out there that have had this swap done to it.
They're doing it all the time now.
Yeah,
it's happening everywhere.
Well, where are they sourcing the transmissions from? That's what I want to know.
Well,
they didn't make a ton of them in the first place.
Right, but Ferrari uses Getrag gearboxes, so they can buy it from Getrag. They don't have to buy it from Ferrari.
Oh, really? Okay, so
Yeah.
you can just go buy the transmission and then find the. I mean, what about? I mean, how hard is it to get the computer to talk to the engine? Because like trying to swap a Tiptronic to a manual in like a 996 or a 997 is way cost prohibitive because the computer won't talk to one another.
Yeah, well, this is 997 era,
Yeah.
and I would think it's very similar. It's a Bosch system, and I imagine they reflash it to speak to the manual, and then you got to buy some of the ancillary
You
parts from
can't, but
Ferrari.
that's
Like,
not possible. You can't
oh,
just flash it. It's a
okay, well,
completely different,
yeah,
yeah.
I'm not sure how they do it,
Or
but
at least with the
it
997s. I don't know about
yeah,
the
it used to cost 30 grand, and I imagine that was 3 years ago. So today, I
yeah,
imagine it costs 40 grand to do it. But
yeah.
it used to make sense that you could pick up an F1 for like, really nice one for like 80 to $90,000, spend 30 grand on it. You're in at 120, and now you've got $150,000 car. As natural manuals were approaching 200 and then 250, and in some cases $300,000 for a beautiful manual car. But this car only bringing 122 just
Well, if
shocks
this
me.
were if this were a real one, you think this is a 200,000 plus car?
Yeah, yeah,
Still
absolutely.
at this
Yeah.
with corrections? I don't
It-
know about that.
listen. You know how we've seen like there's been a softening on the market, but some of those Ferraris that are naturally manuals are still unicorns, and they're still bringing like top dollar,
Yeah,
especially if
especially the
they're in
430s.
excellent condition.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah, this is a car I would absolutely want to put in the garage, and at that number, that's attainable. That's a real number because like
yeah,
everybody makes fun of me because I had an R8 for a while and I really loved that car, and that one had had the R-tronic transmission, which is which basically is a computer actuated manual, and
sure.
swapping you don't actually have to you don't to swap. To make an R8 R-tronic a manual, you don't have to change the transmission. You just have to you convert it. You remove the computer actuator. You just basically take all that stuff off and install the stick. It's a little bit more complex than that, but you don't have to. It's a $10,000 job. There's a guy that's pretty famous or got fairly famous on the interwebs here recently for having done so, and it's kind of a big deal in the R8 world. So it's pretty easy to convert those. Whereas this car with an F1 transmission, there's no like
full swap.
It's
a full
swap. It's a different transmission. So it's a lot harder. Now that said, an R8 with an R-tronic with a similar miles can be had for well under $100,000.
Yeah,
80, and then you spend 10, and you've got a manual one. But for not that much more money, you're saying it's possible to do this to a Ferrari, and I'd way rather have this car than an R8. Even the R8 might be the better car in a lot of ways.
True. Yeah, these things are an amazing driving car. They are absolutely fantastic, and they kind of represent sort of the end of the analog era because the car that came after this was so good it starts to get kind of video game like with the dual clutch transmission and a bit more power. But these cars, you really feel like you're doing all the driving. It's a lot like a 997 GT3 RS. I mean, it's a elbows up, and you and the car become one. They're fantastic.
Get after it. That sounds awesome.
Yeah.
What do you guys think of the results of this Ferrari with a different transmission with a 6-speed swap? Is this something you would consider? Are you a Ferrari owner? Would you consider buying or owning a Ferrari that is not the way the factory sent it out into the world? Is that blasphemy?
Sure.
Or are you like, whatever, as long as it makes it better? What do you think of the value? What do you think of the price? What do you think of the results of this auction? We really want your comments below. We love hearing from you guys. So let us know below, and hit the subscribe, like, and notification button if you haven't done it already. Shout out to our super fans like Ross Churchhouse and Chachi and all the other guys, Family Guy 5150. Who else is on there? I'm sorry if I'm forgetting other names. We really love seeing you guys play along, putting your bid in there, and then putting the minute mark so you're proving when you did. That's super dope. You guys are so awesome.
That's your third win of the week, JP. I think we got one more car to review this week. I hope I get it so I can spank you back.
Well, all you got to do is be a pessimistic a-hole like me, and you'll get better at this. All right, guys, we will see you tomorrow on Bid Nerds, your daily nerd on the most interesting car of the day from all the automotive enthusiast auction sites. Goodbye. Nerd!